down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. It's just been one of those kind of strange weeks, as far as, things are going, from that perspective. But hey, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming in, all of you on Rumble, all of you on Facebook, all of you on the Twitterverse or the Xverse or whatever. Hey, if I'm broadcasting on X, does that mean I'm an X-man? Sorry, that was so damn cheesy. Anyway, hello and welcome. Everyone who has come here, and even like YouTube folks too. I still have a few people that listen and watch over on YouTube, and then of course I have my faithful who are listening on Spotify. We have Preston and Clayton. I know you're out there. You're going to be listening to this later. So just thought I'd give you guys a shout out as well. All right. So plenty of stuff going on, even though our illustrious leaders are not in session in the People's House or the Senate. But that's okay because, just got a ton of stuff to go through. But before I get to that stuff, folks, just I do not have a pet of the week for tonight, which really kind of sucks because Outlaw Dogs put together a wonderful intro for me for pet of the week. And you'll get to see that next week for sure. But get your submissions in. If you have a pet that you want to come in or to be featured on the Whiskey Musings broadcast for the Pet of the Week segment that happens every Wednesday night, then you need to send it in to fans, F-A-N-S, at whiskeymusings.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at whiskeymusings.online. So again, tonight there is no pet of the week, unfortunately, because I didn't get a submission in fast enough for me to queue it up and get it all set up and everything else. But that's okay. We've got one on tap for next week, a late submission, and I've got to get the graphic that Outlaw Dogs has gone and put wonderful, put a lot of work, into it, I think, and so it'll premiere next week. Okay. Well, I mean, Amy over on Rumble says, if you ever need one, Rick, let me know. Amy, just, submit them. And anybody, seriously, just submit them. I try to do them in order, but, when they come in and everything, but just submit them. And I try and remind everybody on a Saturday, I try to let everybody know that I need one. Just like tonight, I have a question for whiskey for Saturday's segment, but I'm going to need that also. I need some other questions going over there too. So anyway, let's take a look. I'm just going to run through really quick. I don't usually look at this very often. So we have, it looks like 53 total watching over on Rumble. Jump in the chat, sign up, get in the chat, get involved with the trip or the setup there. Let's see how many. Doesn't look like any. Well, I mean, I can't tell if anybody's watching over on YouTube and Facebook. What do I have here? Facebook watchers. Oh, I got Becky and from the land down under. Thank you for joining. I do appreciate it. I think you might be the lone one that's over there. I don't know. Yeah, you're the lone one, I think, over there, Becky, but that's okay. Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you for coming. I do appreciate it. Okay. Let's get on to tonight's. Well, first of all, let me go ahead and, I hit my microphone. Let me go ahead and show you tonight. I am drinking Buffalo Trace, Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, and that at least would have set that up. So that's cool. That's cool. All right, and let me go ahead and bring up tonight's sponsor, which of course, because I almost forgot. Oh my gosh. Today is Whiskey Wednesday. And of course, Whiskey Wednesday is like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And everybody who's out there is a badass for joining. All the Whiskey Warriors are badasses for that. Okay. So let me go ahead and get the sponsor up here. And that is, of course, True Grit Roots Network. TGRN champions independent artists while paying respect to the pioneers who shaped modern roots music, featuring outlaw country, blues, and rock with a unique twist of urban that is carefully selected and purposely put together. We are the radio highway that connects the back roads, highways, and city streets to your favorite dance hall, roadhouse, and juke joint. TGRN provides original exclusive programming and interviews that are produced and hosted by our own team of DJs, hosts, and personalities. Find us on the web at tgrn.net to download our app and in the App Store and from Google Play. Alternatively, you can find us in the Live 365 catalog of internet digital radio stations and through the Live 365 app as well. You can also play our station on your Amazon Alexa by saying play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Be sure to use the word from in the command play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Live 365 is also on Roku. Breaking boundaries for authentic Roots Radio, True Grit Roots Network, tgrn.net, Austin, Texas. And of course, I am a part owner in that venture. Speaking of that venture, I also want to remember also want to remind you folks that I am looking for other potential talent, podcasters, and that kind of stuff for a project that I'm working on with TGRN. So if you have another podcaster that isn't super big or whatever, I mean, Mark K, Dan Bongino, those guys are already taken. But if you have another podcaster or something that you would like to nominate and that we can reach out to and talk to about from TGRN, that would be great. Send it to us at talk at tgrn.net. That's talk at tgrn.net, and you can send us a link. You can send us who it is, that kind of thing, and we'll go and take a look and see what's going on. We got a project going on for that. So that would be fantastic, especially if you know some young people that listen to podcasts. Please do so for that as well. All right. So, everything that Biden touches goes to crap. I mean, let's be honest. We pretty much knew that from the beginning, and actually even Obama said that too. Obama said, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. And, that's pretty much the case. I mean, let's just take a look at, things like, the border, for an example. I got a bunch of things on the border tonight. Let's look at things like the economy. Yep. I've been pounding the crap out of people out, and especially, Joe and Kamala, they've been really hyping up this whole Bidenomics stuff. That's been a total failure, complete failure. And I got some proof on that tonight again as well. Not like I, don't harp on him enough with that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things that are going on out there, and he just continually gets deeper and deeper and deeper in crap. How this guy ever ended up in the White House I'll be honest with you, is beyond me. But, you know, he did, unfortunately. At least that's the the story anyway. So, you know, but I don't think he's going to be there for very much longer. Seriously, I really don't. But let's go ahead and start with tonight's first article. And tonight, we're going to, of course, talk about some more things about good old Hunter Biden and his pay for influence scheme. Pay for influence. So apparently, and I got into it. I say into it, but I got into a discussion with a person who is, one of the liberal, what do you call it? Mind virus kind of people, the leftists, the ones that are sticking their heads so far up their rear ends that they can't see what's going on right in front of them. And I basically told him, I said, well, court records are showing that, Hunter Biden took payments from the Chinese. He had actually admitted it in court. And yeah, he actually did. And for those of you that don't know, they've also looked at like millions. He claimed to this. So this article from Just the News kind of points to it. But the title here is Silk Road Paved with Cash. Court records confirm millions flowed to Biden family from China. And it came from, surprise, surprise, the District of Delaware case that he was in the plea agreement. And I've got it up here on the screen. And I've got it in the link as well. Links in the description of the videos as well, if you want to head on over to Rumble or YouTube and pick those up. Actually, I think you can also pick it up on Facebook too, come to think about it. But where you really want to focus is down in Exhibit 1. And Exhibit 1 is a part of this. They talk about this here. So starting off, I mean, I'm not going to read through the whole damn thing because let's face it, we all know. But here he took in through at least early 2017, he was employed, meaning Hunter, was employed by a prestigious multinational law firm in a of counsel capacity. And for that work, he earned a substantial income totaling more than $2.3 million in 2018 and $2.1 million in 2018. And this was a company called Owasco PC and Owasco LLC that, again, he was serving on the Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, and a Chinese private equity fund. So he starts off talking about that. And then it also talks about in the exhibit that it's a well-documented and long-standing, that's talking about his drug abuse. But anyway, he admitted to all of the drug abuse and everything else. And then a little bit further down, it talks about during calendar year of 2017, Biden earned substantial income, including just under $1 million from the company he formed with the CEO of a Chinese business conglomerate. And there's too many sixes here, but there's 6 sixes from his domestic business interests and approximately $664,000 from a Chinese infrastructure investment company, $500,000 in director's fees from the Ukrainian energy company, so that's Burisma, and $70,000 relating to Romanian business, and $48,000 from a multinational law firm. Now, all of these things, and you start adding this up and adding it up and further, and it just points to the fact that he's making all kinds of money. He's admitting to the fact that he's doing all this. But you've got to ask yourself the question, what in the heck is he doing to garner all this? He is not necessarily yes, he went to law school, but as far as I know, he's no longer practicing law. And so, yeah, it's just a big old mess. Well, we also got information, again, from Just the News in this article. Foreign oligarchs moved millions to Biden-tied firms before meeting Joe Biden, according to the House Oversight Committee investigators. The HOC has now traced more than $20 million in funds from Russians, Chinese, Ukrainians, Kazakhs, and and Romanians. So Ukrainians and Romanians into Biden-tied entities. This is just, I mean, again, the more they dig, the more they get, the more stuff they find. And so here from the piece, firms tied to the Biden family collected more than $20 million from foreign sources, including big payments from controversial oligarchs who afterwards had private dinners with Joe Biden as vice president, congressional investigators disclosed today. In its third memo analyzing bank records, the GOP-led House Oversight and Accountability Committee reported it had found a clear pattern of the Biden family and its partners doing business with Russia, Ukraine, Kazakh, Chinese, and Romanian figures who had legal and other troubles, and then collecting money around the times of gaining access to Joe Biden. So in other words, what they did is they matched it. It seems like what they've done is they've matched up the money with the visits from these people coming over and meeting with Joe Biden. The pattern, according back to the piece, the pattern, the congressional investigators noted, corroborates recent testimony from foreign Hunter Biden business partner Devon Archer that the presidential son solicited business from foreigners who were seeking influence, access, or protection from a family brand that included Joe Biden. Now, supposedly, they are also going to talk to Eric Schweitzer, I believe is his last name, how it's pronounced. But anyway, so if Devon Archer was the business guy, Eric is apparently the money man. And Dan Bongino talked about that today on his show. And so it's going to be interesting. Apparently he's set to come and testify before the committee as well. And so that's going to be kind of interesting for that. Sorry, a little parched. But anyway, the thing about it is here, though, is that this is just, I mean, the evidence against this guy is just mounding up, mounding more and more and more. So, yeah, it's crazy, folks. It is completely crazy that we've got this guy in the White House. And, that just the fact that he got in with all of the stuff. I mean, when he was running, I was talking about this, the press, he tried like 3 separate times, and the press had videotape of him lying, and nobody bothered to put it out there except for conservative media outlets. Nobody bothered to put it out there. And this is where this is just incredible that people are still believing everything. So here's kind of the list from the piece. And here's kind of the list in terms of the amount of money that they got here. 3.5 million from Russian oligarch Elena Baturina and her now deceased husband, Yuri Lushkov, former mayor of Moscow. We have 142,300 connected to Kines Rakshev. I can't pronounce these names, so anyway. Then we have 6.5 tied to Burisma Holdings. 3 million from the oligarch Gabriel Popovicu. Anyway, who is in Romania. And then you have 8 million tied to Chinese entities, including the CEFC, and its chairman, Yu Jiangming, who was detained in 2018 by Chinese authorities for suspected economic crimes and bribery. Okay. So they also have a link to the bank records, which I'm actually going to go ahead and open this up. I just want to grab it to make sure that that I get it. I'll save it later, but I just want to grab it. But anyway, the point being here is that, again, anyone who has any doubts over the fact that Hunter Biden himself was dirty and that this was being passed on to Joe, because Hunter did admit to his family members that he was paying, that dad was taking something like 50% of his salary, and that he was paying all of dad's bills and things like that. It's just mind-boggling. This is the biggest story. This is the biggest scandal in American history. This pales Watergate by far. And yeah, I just can't see where these folks, these idiots on the left, have not just like dumped this guy like a bad habit, other than the fact that his position is now acting as a blocker and a deflector for the real problem, which is while he was doing all of this stuff, while Biden was doing all of this, where was Obama? I mean, most of this stuff happened during Obama's era, and time. I mean, Obama had to set this up, or Obama had to know that they were setting this up, especially with the whole Burisma thing, where he was telling the guy that if you don't fire Shokin, we're going to withhold the $1 billion. I mean, that's something that had to get cleared through Biden, through Obama, especially when Biden claims, well, call him up when he got called on it. So again, I kind of agree with Dan Bongino on this. They're protecting Obama. They're making sure that Obama, who is literally the golden child of the Democrat Party, is protected. And so that's basically what's going on. Now, whether or not any of this stuff actually got sent over to Obama, it would be kind of interesting to know. And I'm sure that we'll eventually get there. Shout out to Tommy over on Facebook. Hello, Tommy. Hey, I finally made it. Yep. Thank you. Okay. So obviously I have been picking on Bidenomics because come on, folks. This is Bidenomics doesn't really exist. It isn't any kind of a economic theory. There's no kind of, or there's no semblance of a plan when it comes to this stuff. It's basically what they're doing is they're trying to come up with a catchy name that somebody might grab onto and, convince people to make the low IQ voters think that they are the ones who are, doing all of this wonderful stuff for the country. Now, the things that they focus on are the low unemployment rate. They focus on the GDP, which is, 2.4 or something like that. They also focus on things like manufacturing, and I've kicked it out on Twitter a lot because I like Twitter. I like going on Twitter and shaking up the liberal leftist idiots over there because they are clearly low IQ, and so sometimes it's fun to go and pick them off, as they say, as they're going along. But those are the things that they focus on. Now, the thing about GDP, for an example, as a number, is that it's actually GDP includes all products, gross domestic products that are made. So it includes things that the government is buying as well. Okay. And so that's part of the problem, is that when Biden started spending all this money, it actually, was included as a part of the GDP. And so we don't even know the 2.4 GDP or whatever could be coming from the, all of the spending that we've been doing through our government and all of this investment that he is doing supposedly in all these green energies. I've got something on that a little bit later on, but let's take a closer look, let's say, at this whole jobs report. Okay. Because Bidenomics itself has been a complete disaster. It's been a bastard too, but it's been a complete disaster. So here's the thing. Let's dig in. And the Epoch Times did this in terms of a piece. So let's kind of dig a little bit into the jobs report. Well, the most recent jobs report, I think they said they were adding 187,000 jobs, which was less than what was expected. But there's even an underlying current for that. There's an underlying current when it comes to that kind of thing. Man, I like that Buffalo Trace. Anyway, there's an underlying current here. And so let me just say, go from the piece here that investors, so this is coming from the Epoch Times, investors called the July jobs data a Goldilocks report. It wasn't too hot or too cold, but just right for the Federal Reserve and the financial markets. The headline figure fell short of economists' expectations with only 187,000 new jobs last month. However, upon delving into the monthly employment report from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, an analyst discovered concerning trends that shed light on the current state of the U.S. market. First of all, full-time employment levels plunged by 585,000 in July to 134,274 million. Okay. So here's the thing. Full-time jobs, they're starting to decline. And I'm going to tell you, realistically, when you're looking at this, you need to understand there is a difference in how the government counts unemployment. And there are certain parameters where if you have a part-time job or you work 2 or 3 part-time jobs, that is not necessarily, it's counted, if I recall correctly, it's counted as one. So they essentially are kind of covering up this thing, but the decline in full-time jobs is a factor. And I've shown images of workers who are looking for full-time employment, or are employed that are ages 18 on up. That number's been dropping a little bit. It's been lower so far. It's been lower than pre-pandemic levels, although it's getting close. It's getting closer, but they are lower. And this is a problem. This is an issue with this. Okay. In the piece here, part-time employment, which is defined as people who work less than 35 hours per week, skyrocketed last month. Part-time jobs soared from 972 to 972,000 to 27.153 million. Moreover, the number of people employed part-time for economic reasons remained the same at 4 million. This metric examines individuals who would have preferred full-time employment but have seen their hours slashed or can't find full-time positions. Okay. One area of disappointment. So this is James Knightley, the chief international economist at ING, said in a research note, one area of disappointment within the household employment survey is that the strength was driven by part-time jobs. The household survey shows part-time employment rose just under 1 million last month, while full-time employment fell nearly 600K. So while wage growth apparently remained robust, swapping full-time workers for part-time workers is in aggregate going to lower household incomes. And the reason why is because, of course, when you have part-time jobs, businesses don't pay the same benefits that they do to full-time employees. So these are actually cost-cutting measures. This is an indication, of course, that the corporations are cutting back on trying to pay out some of these additional benefits. This is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. While economists try to, so here more from the piece, while economists try to avoid focusing too much on a single data point, they assert that significant increases in part-time work typically occur in recessions. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, the rise in part-time employment results from a cyclical reduction in labor demand that reduces hours worked, along with increasing the unemployment rate. So an upward trend of part-time employment levels can function as a recession indicator. That said, part-time jobs remain slightly below pre-pandemic levels of 27.828 million. Okay, yeah, numbers. But another thing that is concerning is that the Bureau of Labor and Statistics also reported that government payrolls have been climbing. It climbed 15,000 in July, while this was the slowest growth since December. Government jobs increased by 370,000 in the first 7 months of 2023, accounting for more than 20% of the employment gains this year. Now, listen very carefully to that. Okay. The government is employing people rather than the private sector. And unfortunately, for anyone who is a student of history, when FDR started his whole jobs thing during the Great Depression, okay, this was something that actually, by a lot of historians nowadays looking back on it, they actually think that he actually extended the Great Depression because of all of the Tennessee Valley Authority jobs and all of that stuff. He actually extended it because, as my listeners, my faithful Whiskey Warrior P1s out there all know, that when the government has to start spending money, they print more money. When they print more money, then what ends up happening is inflation starts going up, because inflation is the percentage or the number that has to deal with the value of the dollar and how much any one particular dollar will buy. And so this is not a good thing. This really is not a good thing. So economist Stephen Moore says that the trend that the government is expanding and will account for a significant portion of job creation in the U.S. economy in 2023, he says that this trend is alarming. The hiring for federal, state, and local governments this year is more than any industry in America, he wrote in a newsletter on July 25th. It was more than mining, manufacturing, construction, wholesale, and transportation combined. With the federal government running a $2 trillion annual deficit, and with the COVID crisis long ago behind us, shouldn't we be systemically downsizing? So the government should actually be getting smaller, not bigger, and yet it is getting bigger. Joe Biden is poised to add 82,000 employees to the federal government payrolls in fiscal year of 2024. That would be a 3.6% increase from the previous years. So, yeah, this is getting to a bit of a problem. Well, they also note in the piece that the revisions that we've been having have not been revising upward. They've been revising downward. And so here's part of the problem. And according to this, the June jobs data was revised lower by 24,000 to 185,000. The May payroll numbers was also revised down by 25,000 to 281,000. So far this year, every single month has seen downward revisions in employment figures. The last time the U.S. economy witnessed 6 consecutive months of downward revisions outside of recessions was at the peak of the housing bubble in September and October of 2007, noted Tavi Costa, a macro strategist at Crescent Capital. So these numbers are not looking good for Joe Biden. Now, let's move on from the jobs report. Another thing that is an indicator of our weakening economy is the fact that U.S. housing affordability is now at an all-time low. Now, that title is a little misleading. Basically, what that means is that people being able to afford housing in America right now is actually smaller, and that's a bad thing, okay? And the subtitle here says it's more difficult than ever to afford housing in the U.S. This comes from Fox Business. Global Markets publication, the Koblesi Letter, declared last week that housing affordability in America is now at an all-time low, pointing to several striking data points showing it is more expensive to pay for a place to live in the U.S. than ever. For starters, the outlet said buying a house in the U.S. has become a luxury. It pointed to a Redfin report released Friday showing the median home mortgage in the U.S. hit $2,605 a month in July, which was up 19% from a year ago and is the most expensive ever. Koblesi reported there are now a record of 31 states where homeowners pay a median monthly house payment above $2,000 a month, and Hawaii is now the first state in history with a median house payment of above $5,000. Not far behind are Californians whose median mortgage bill is at $4,800, followed by Massachusetts homeowners who pay $4,000. 37 states now require at least 30% of median annual income for new home payments in what the letter said is truly an unprecedented market. In California, the median house payment requires a record of 64% of median household income. So here's the thing. It's costing us more, and we also have a problem with the interest rates. Interest rates right now at the base rate of 5.5, which happened just this past couple of weeks, we're looking at interest rates for housing loans somewhere in the 7s if you're lucky and have a decent credit rating. If you have a high credit rating, a low credit rating, you might end up with something that is much higher than that. I don't know about you, but I remember when I first bought my home, the first time that I bought this 20 years ago, I was dealing with like a 6% house payment, 6% APR. I am much happier where I am now. Much happier where I am now. So this again is just an indication that things are not as happy as what Biden is touting. We also just hit the record of $1 trillion in Americans' credit card debt. Now, this comes from CNN Business. Okay. So it's the highest ever. Basically, what that means, folks, is that people are using credit in order to make their daily ends meet. Okay. It's surpassing $1 trillion now, which essentially breaks down to, believe it or not, about 253,000 plus dollars for every single household in America, every single person of working age household in America. Okay, I don't have that I don't have $250,000 just hanging out. I'm pretty sure nobody else does either. But apparently, coming from the piece here, Americans' credit debt levels have just notched a new but undesirable milestone. For the first time ever, they've surpassed $1 trillion, according to data released Tuesday by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. During the second quarter, credit card balances shot up by $45 billion, or nearly 4.6%, to land at $1.03 trillion, according to the New York Fed's latest quarterly report on household debt and credit. Rising credit debt and auto loan balances helped to drive overall household debt levels up 1% to $17.06 trillion for the quarter, the report showed. Overall household debt spiked $2.9 trillion since the end of 2019 before the pandemic. Now, these debt balances that I'm reading, according to the piece here, are nominal and are not adjusted for inflation. These increases are coming at a time where interest rates have quickly vaulted to a 22-year high, which is another thing that I keep hitting this Bidenomics crap on. Sooner or later, you're going to start seeing some problems within the credit industry. And again, with those, you could have been paying like 19% on a revolving credit account a couple of years ago, and now you're looking at 23 to 25% potential rates on some credit cards. This is crazy, absolutely nuts. And what's even worse is, here's another indicator. Americans are pulling, this also from CNN Business, by the way. Americans are pulling money out of their 401k plans at an alarming rate. So what do you think is happening here? Well, straight up, Americans can't make ends meet. The average American is having problems with making ends meet. And so what they're doing is they are going and cashing out in their 401ks, which is their future, their savings. They're getting rid of their savings. They're running up credit card debt. And I'm sorry, but you run the credit card debt up and then you have those high interest payments. We're looking at a huge problem, and let's face it, we've been stagnating for the last couple of years. We're probably heading toward a recession. That's all the indications that I'm getting, is that we're heading toward a recession here. So unfortunately, this whole Bidenomics crap, it's not working, folks. It just is not working at all. All right. This is a big problem. And why anybody can sit here. I even had a leftist go and say, this isn't Biden's fault. This is Trump's fault. And I'm sorry, folks, but while I've thought about that kind of scenario, I still think, we're looking at 2 years out of the recovery of the pandemic, and we're looking at, 2 years of an administration that has been spending. We keep promising to send money over to Ukraine. We keep promising to send money. We've sent money off to Taiwan as well to help them with their issues. We keep sending money out. We keep spending money on illegals coming in the country. And now it's finally some of these cities are starting to feel the pressure now. These sanctuary cities are starting to feel the pressure. This is just an incredible situation that we're in. And again, folks, if you haven't already started preparing, I'd prepare now. I definitely would start preparing now, because this is not going to be something that's going to bounce very quickly back after this. We're just not gonna bounce back very quickly, folks. I'm just sorry. I hate to be the bearer of bad news with this, but that is the case. All right. So let me take a short second, and I want to talk to you about getting Whiskey Musings logo gear. You can head off, and if you try to do this on your mobile phone, I've been told that the mobile phone stuff, it doesn't work. So just go to a a web browser, a regular desktop web browser, and head off to store.whiskeymusings.online. Check this out. I have several products here. I've got hoodies and sweatshirts, drinkware with my motto, "When I drink, I think," Whiskey Musings. I've got my logo, t-shirts, tank tops, all kinds of stuff. Do me a favor. If you want to support the show, I try to keep the prices down. I don't want to, take you, take you guys for a ride, because that's not the way that I work. But head on over there, take a look, see if there's something there that kind of, floats your boat, let's say. And do me a favor, help support the show by picking up some of this stuff. I've got bags, I've got gear bags, I've got backpacks, I've got sweatpants. Just there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. And I know you guys want the hats. I'm still working on getting the hats. And I'm going to be, I'm going to have to fight with them for it, but I'm getting there. Yeah. Bam, over on Rumble says, "Love my sweatshirt." Yep. She went and got one. And no, sorry, Outlaw, I do not have Merkins. Okay. I don't have Merkins. That would be a little weird, having my logo in your nether region. Yeah, that just doesn't work. But anyway, do me a favor, head on over there, take a look. If you can afford to get something in Biden's economy and everything, yeah, help me out, support the show. That would be absolutely fantastic. I do appreciate that. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's, some accessories. I've got like the Whiskey Musings hat, which is this guy right here. I've got this hat, which is a kind of a trucker dad cap, has my phrase on it on the top. And then we also, it's going to start moving into some of the cold. So I've got gaiters, which these ones, I have a friend of mine that really, really loves these gaiters. It's got a bright Whiskey Musings logo on them. He loves the gaiter. It's got dual fabric to it, and it's just fantastic. He loves that thing. He picked that up a long time ago, and he still wears it today. So, yeah. So head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and check it out. I would really, really appreciate that. Okay, so let's move on to another disaster that Biden has done, which he keeps, fighting over. He keeps talking about it. We've had Mayorkas in for several committee hearings, and so on and so forth. Yeah, he, buddy, I don't know what you mean by, is that a cap? It's like a baseball type cap. Yeah. See, like a baseball type hat. It's a little dusty. I apologize. But it's a baseball type cap. So, got to get rid of some of the dust before I show that again. But anyway, so yes. All right. We had some disturbing images come from the border just this recent week. And so look, Mayorkas sits there and says the border is closed. The border is not closed. Okay. It literally is not closed. I don't care what anybody says. It's not. It's open like a freaking sieve. We've got water leaking everywhere from this thing. We've got people crossing at pretty much any time of the day that they want. And it's going up and up and up and up. Oh, real quick, got to give a shout out to Sabo OH. Thank you very much for the Rumble rant. Sabo says, "Thanks for giving us straight talk backed up by facts." I appreciate that. I'm kind of a ones and zeros, black and white kind of guy. Facts and evidence are my kind of my thing. So thank you very much. I do appreciate that Rumble rant. And I do appreciate it very, very much. Okay, so let me get on to this. This came through. This is Fox News. And I don't know about you, but this is a little scary. This incident happened in Texas. Images show men armed with rifles and body armor coming across the southern border. And you can take a look at these images if you head on over to my Rumble stream. If you're listening on the audio portion of the program, you can head on over to Rumble or YouTube and play it back and check it out. But yeah, they're coming across. It looks like they've got some heavier than normal weaponry. They've got, it looks like rifles, and one of them is wearing like a tactical body armor. But apparently what ended up happening is they came across the border and then they went back. Came across the border and then went back over the border. So they weren't actually caught. Supposedly the Border Patrol, a special unit of the Border Patrol, was dispatched to go to the area and search for them, but they couldn't find them. So yeah, so this is, I mean, this is some scary stuff. If you live down on the border towns of Texas, it's, but anyway, yeah, this is not good. This is not a good thing. I mean, I feel for the people that are in these areas where these people are coming across. I really do. And this guy's carrying a long rifle. You know, again, it's a, or what the libs would call an assault rifle. Even though we all know that it's not, but it looks like it could be potentially an AR-15 or something along those lines. But this guy is coming across. They were caught apparently on some kind of a cam or whatever. I don't know if anybody's been to the border. I've been to the border once in the last 10 years. And, yeah, it really, really, really kind of is a little spooky when you're going down there. They've got these trailers that have cameras on them. You've seen them. A lot of places in the cities, they put them in parking lots and stuff for the police officers to watch over the parking lots. And the Border Patrol does the exact same thing on the border. They put these trailers out, and they are able to detect movement, and they have night vision and so on and so forth. So, yeah, so that's basically how this happened. Now, again, these people, no idea. They have no idea what these guys were coming across for. They have no idea what they did while they were here, and they certainly don't know where the heck they went. But apparently this is somewhere around another incident came just days after drone operators in Eagle Pass spotted another armed smuggler carrying a long gun and guiding a group of illegal immigrants across the Rio Grande. But it's not just Texas that's having the problem, because here, also from Fox News, here border crossings in the Arizona desert have spiked over 100% despite the record-setting heat. Daily border crossings in the Tucson sector have surged 135% in July. So, our border is still wide open. I mean, I don't know how they can get away with the idea of the border being closed. It's just not, it's not happening. Now, granted, they fell for a while, but now they're spiking back up again in July. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Tucson sector recorded that daily crossings have soared to 1,900 in July, which is a 134% increase from June's number of 812. Now, keep in mind, that's daily arrivals. That's not, 1,900 for the month. That's daily. That's a lot of freaking crossings, folks. A lot of freaking crossings. And, the other thing, too, is that it's not just like Central American folks like Mexicans and Guatemalans and so on and so forth that are doing this. Check out this piece in the American Military News. Chinese are using a new smuggling route to enter the U.S. illegally, according to a report. here in the piece, an internal federal intelligence report indicates that U.S. authorities are concerned with a new Chinese migrant route that migrants are using to illegally cross into the United States through, of all places, Florida. According to an internal federal intelligence report obtained by the Daily Caller, Chinese migrants are taking boats from the Bahamas to illegally enter the United States through Florida. The Daily Caller reported that the intelligence report lists gaps in intelligence, including where Chinese migrants are located in the Bahamas, who is coordinating the illegal immigration effort between the Bahamas and the state of Florida, and why Chinese migrants are engaging in self-smuggling operations from the Bahamas. The report indicates 5 incidents of Chinese migrants attempting to smuggle themselves into the United States from the Bahamas. A recent smuggling attempt reportedly occurred on July 16th, involving 6 Chinese migrants. The report stated that the Chinese purchased a Bahamian registered vessel in GBI and tested the capabilities before leaving and being interseated in Palm Beach. All 6 Chinese migrants were repatriated to the Bahamas. So it's not just our southern neighbors that are going on. It's also other migrants that are coming over here. I mean, I don't know how many people have seen the reports, like the guys that are reporting on the border. They come out and they talk to these folks, and they're coming from Cuba. They're coming from all these different other places. They're not coming from, where you would typically think, like Central and South America. They're just not. And yet our catch and release that we currently have that's going on is just amazing to me. It's completely amazing in terms of how this is going. So I mean, again, the border itself is wide open, and that's the problem. I mean, I don't know what the House of Representatives honestly is waiting on. I know that I've seen a couple of articles talking about how Mayorkas, how they're, a lot of the sorry, Coco. Yes, I did say Cuba, which is, kind of the pronunciation. I know it's not spelled that way, but it's Cuba. Anyway. All right. So, as far as Mayorkas and everything else, there's a lot of people who are saying, no, we can't impeach him. We can't impeach him. Well, we can impeach Biden. And I've actually even gone so far as to say we should be impeaching Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris is in charge of the border. She's the border czar. And so, yeah, that's basically how it goes. And I'm being corrected. It's Cuba. No, it's Cuba. Sorry, Coco. It's Cuba. Anyway, Cuba. Yeah, Kennedy did used to say Cuba. Anyway, sorry. And yes, the Cubans are good people. They actually have made it a big deal. But they've made it through a lot worse than we have. But anyway, so yeah, this is just horrible. I mean, this is just horrible. And I don't even understand how anyone with any kind of sense, especially on the left, who's not a, far left diehard communist Marxist kind of person. I honestly don't understand how somebody can actually justify what this man is doing to us. Realistically. And so anyway, It just doesn't make any sense. Well, let's talk a little bit about the wonderful electrical vehicles that our wonderful president and especially our vice president keep pushing. Okay. Apparently, the major electric vehicle company that was promoted by Biden has now declared bankruptcy. Check this out. This from the Epoch Times. So you remember a while ago, this guy, it was a California-based EV company that was touted by President Biden. He actually had them on a call, and Proterra is the name, and they made battery electric buses. Now, anyone, I've talked about it on this show. I've shown it too. The electric school buses in Michigan, for an example, those guys went ahead and have been having problems getting parts. The school districts have been having problems keeping the buses on the roads, and they're not taking off. They're not, they're costing 5 times as much initially. They don't have any parts to come in. They oftentimes, I think, if I remember the article, the Michigan school district was saying, or some of the Michigan school districts were saying that they had as much as 1/3 of them off the road at any given point in time. And so, these, and yes, 3 Chevy, you can charge your phone on those buses. We've also seen multiple instances of where these buses are starting on fire. They're catching on fire and they're burning up. In fact, there was an article that I was just seeing, not that there was an electric bus, but this was a Tesla. It took close to 16,000 gallons of water for a fire department to try and put out a Tesla that was on fire and burning. They had tried to put it out, and it didn't, they thought it was out, started back up again. They hit it again. They thought it was out. It started back up again. It got to a point where what they ended up doing is they grabbed it and they drug it into a pool of water to keep it from burning and catching on fire. You also remember back in the hurricanes, there were several instances that were coming out of saltwater intrusion sparking fires on the electric cars that were all down in Florida after the hurricane came through. So, even here locally, there was a car that was supposedly on fire, and it was initially reported as being an EV. It was just, the local fire department doesn't have anything to put anything out or don't have anything to put it out. And so they just kind of let it burn itself out, because apparently water doesn't even help these things at all. So, the thing about this particular company, though, in particular, is the fact that, Biden was touting it and he put a bunch of government money into it. And this is the thing, is that the government putting money into industry like this, and it cuts back on competitiveness, because you start as an organization, you start to get used to that government money. And pretty soon that government money goes ahead and basically dries up after a while, because the government just can't continually fund something. It doesn't work that way. And so when you have situations like this, and this company in particular got more than likely too used to the money coming in from the government, and they mismanaged it, just like government does with everything else, is they go and, third party payer. Milton Friedman talked about the third party payer system. If you ever get a chance, look that up on YouTube. It's an older video, but he talks about the third party payer system when it comes to healthcare in particular. Where if you have the the guy actually paying the bills, he's going to want the less money and higher quality, spending less money and higher quality. Whereas the guy that is the two-party payer system, he isn't going to care that much about the quality. He's going to care about the money aspect. But when you have a third-party payer, like the government, they just don't care because it's not their money, where they bring in the taxes. They don't care. It's not their money. It's the government's money. It's the people's money. And so what they do is they end up not caring about how much it costs, and they don't care about the quality either because, again, it's not their money. And that's basically what he explains. Now, he does a much more elegant way of doing it than I do. But the point here is that whenever you get government involved and government money involved with corporations, it becomes a bit of a boondoggle. And that's essentially what happens here, or what has happened here in this particular case. So from the piece, the company which made electric buses and parts for EVs cited various market and macroeconomic headwinds in announcing on August 8th that it was filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The firm, which President Biden once praised for helping America get in the game of trying to become the world's biggest manufacturer of electric buses, said it was seeking bankruptcy protection as it tries to raise more operating capital or find a buyer. Biden said during the interview of the 2021 virtual tour of the Proterra facility, "Well, you're making a big difference, man. We have a lot of catching up to do, but we're going to be in a position where we ought to own the future." He continued, adding that the United States should set its sights on becoming the single most significant supplier of EVs and buses in the world. Now, what's funny about this is what a lot of people don't tell you is that, first of all, China's already kind of cornered the market. They have the majority of batteries, and they also have a cornering of the raw materials, not only for this, but also for silicon chip making. And so this is going to be a bit of a problem if we, especially with his Biden's CHIPS Act kind of thing, it's going to be a bit of a problem. I mean, if we want to get into this, we've got to get those raw materials locked up and protected. And right now, that just isn't the case. Okay, so moving on to about, continuing the conversation in terms of the EVs. This also from the Epoch Times as a relative to the conversation here. Most EVs cost more to drive than their gas-powered rivals, according to a study that was just released. From the piece here, more electric cars, crossovers, and trucks cost more to drive than their traditional gasoline-powered counterparts, according to a new study that highlights the wisdom of considering the real-world cost of operating a vehicle before making a buying decision. Acquiring a vehicle is likely to be a person's second biggest purchase after buying a house. With a growing range of electric vehicles now part of the offering, consumers are spoiled for a choice. That is, until bans on gasoline-powered vehicles start going into effect in some states, California, in the coming years. But while many advocates of electric vehicles claim operating cost affordability as an argument of favoring ditching internal combustion engines, a new study from Anderson Economic Group, AEG, has hit the brakes on that argument. It turns out that in AEG's analysis of vehicle fueling costs, the vast majority of gasoline-powered cars and crossovers sold in the United States cost less to fuel than their electric counterparts to actually charge. In the study, the consulting group wrote, with electricity prices trending up and gas prices going down, most traditional gas-powered vehicles cost less to drive than their EV counterparts. Now, I don't know about that. I mean, gas is here in Washington is like upwards of $5 a gallon. But anyway, while the differences vary across segments and depending upon whether charging is done at home or commercially, the results are a stark reminder that going electric simply costs more to run. For example, in the entry segment, which includes cars like the Chevy Bolt and the Honda Civic, a gasoline-powered model costs an average of $9.78 per 100 miles to fuel. By contrast, the average EV in the same segment costs $12.55 to charge per 100 miles, but only if charged mostly at home. If charged mostly commercially, that cost soars to $15.97 per 100 miles. It's the same story for the mid segment, which includes the Chevy Malibu and the Honda Accord. An internal combustion car in this category costs an average of 11.08 per 100 miles in gasoline, while an EV costs $12.62 for most home charging and $16.10 for mostly commercial. The difference slims in the truck segment, with the gasoline-powered pickups on average costing 17.58 cents per 100 miles to fuel, while an EV costs about 17.72 to charge per 100 miles, provided that it's plugged mostly at home. Those who charge their electric pickups mostly commercially are in for a rude awakening, it says, with the cost surging to 26.38 per 100 miles. So, again, first of all, I mean, the cost of an electric vehicle is just just incredible. So it just, that's just to get it started. And then, of course, we don't even start talking about the increase on the power grid when we're dealing with EVs and so on and so forth. So, I mean, again, it's just frustrating to think that electric vehicles are supposed to be the way of the future. And yeah, they're just, I mean, the cost benefit analysis on these things is really not there. Not to mention the fact that you have shorter distances, which I don't know if anybody noticed, but I think if I recall correctly, there was a lawsuit going on against Tesla, and I can't remember where, but there's a lawsuit where Tesla's claims in range for their electric vehicles is actually being questioned, and essentially going to be hashed out in court. So this is something that I mean, look, I've said it to my family. I'll say it again. There's nothing wrong with green energy. There's nothing wrong with investing in green energy, but putting all your eggs in one basket with the green energy, and assuming that green energy is going to be the way to go moving forward is completely asinine. If we were to spread our energy consumption and energy production across a multitude of different, capabilities, whether it's fossil fuels, wind, solar, water power, that kind of thing, it's definitely going to be better off. And as definitely not Karen over on Rumble points out, the most green energy source is nuclear, and that is very, very true. Very true. The amount of fuel that you can get out of nuclear material for the return on investment of the actual size of the nuclear material outpaces even fossil fuels from that particular scenario. And I've even talked on this program about wind and solar and how the wind farms, most of the time you have to change the blades before you even get to a break-even point in the return on investment. Your typical break-even point for the ROI for a wind farm is like around 30 years. Well, you've got to change the blades every 25. So yeah, it's just a mess. It is a mess. And why anybody can sit here and think that this stuff is going to carry us into the future in terms of all of our, I mean, shoot, look at China. Okay. As an example, China basically told, John Kerry to go stick it. They were going to continue developing their coal plants because of the return on investment, the money that it costs to put something in, and the return that you get from it is just, it's just incredible. So going and just passing on fossil fuels and calling them irrelevant anymore is completely asinine, if you ask me. Really quick Rumble rant from Outlaw Dogs. My first rant, share the WMB show. Well, thank you. Thank you, Outlaw. That is great. And I do appreciate the Rumble rant supporting the show as much as you do. Okay. Yeah. All right. So a couple of other things that popped here recently. You remember the do you remember the whole thing with the student loan bailout, and of course the Supreme Court went and kicked Biden to the curb and said, "Hey, you can't do that." Well, I also said that when the Biden administration revamped it and said, "Hey, we're going to scale it back, and we're going to find a way to do it legally. We're going to find a way to do it." Well, they scaled it back to essentially affecting a smaller plan that was affecting 800,000 borrowers at a cost of close to $39 billion. Okay. Well, now that's been hit with legal challenges as well. Check out this piece in the Washington Examiner. Different student loans plan, same problem for Biden. Okay, so here's the thing is that that is, again, with this, the executive branch constitutionally does not have the power of the purse strings. They essentially, their job as the executive, the president and all of the structures underneath him, is to execute and enforce the law, not to create law. And they can't go and just create laws through executive order. Biden was very, very coached very much by Obama in this sense. Obama basically said during his presidency that he could create whatever he wanted because he had a pen and a phone. Now, obviously, I'm paraphrasing that, but the point here is that the executive branch can't just create crap out of the air in terms of laws. The Congress, the legislature, can only do that. That's the way our Constitution is set up. Okay. Well, Biden is trying to get this campaign promise to basically get this done. And I think he's going to get shot down one more time. So according to the suit, and this is in the Washington Examiner again, like I pointed out, according to the suit, this one-time account adjustment is substantively and procedurally unlawful, according to the suit. It was filed on behalf of the Cato Institute and the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. They say the court should declare this forbearance credit scheme unlawful and set it aside and enjoin any cancellation of student loans based on it. The White House says its latest plan is an adjustment to existing federal programs to correct past mistakes, resulting in $39 billion of loan forgiveness, though it says more borrowers could become eligible later on. A White House official said President Biden continues to fight for student loan borrowers on all fronts. But the lawsuit claims the plan doesn't follow a notice and commitment period required by law, instead being created via press release, and violates the apportionment clause of the Constitution by circumventing Congress. This is the key point right here. Okay. This is the key point. These were some of the same complaints made against the original plan. And this is true. Okay. The Neil McCluskey, the director of Cato Institute's Center for Education Reform, said the president and the Department of Education do not have authority to unilaterally change the terms of student loans in order to cancel them. This is the executive branch essentially making law by changing what Congress created. So if successful, this lawsuit would stop the smaller program in much the same way the previous lawsuits stopped the larger one. McCluskey argues that the changes to federal student loan programs must be made by Congress. He says there are legitimate problems with errors made in the accounting of some student loans, but that the program goes far beyond that by partially forgiving hundreds of thousands of student loans that will go unpaid. Now, okay, so here's the thing. All right. Here's the thing about it is that anything that the government forgives automatically becomes a burden to the taxpayer. You cannot just magically wipe out someone's debt without someone else bearing the burden for that debt. Now, if it was purely interest payments, then I could see it. If they said, look, let's say you borrowed $10,000, you've paid back $10,000, the rest of this is interest payments. You could maybe make a case, at least as far as like, okay, that would be wiping out debt. But if you're doing anything to the primary part of the loan, that's a bit of the problem. That's a bit of the problem. So any kind of burden that is going to come from wiping out someone's debt is going to go on the creditor. That's where it's going to be a bit of a problem, is that, again, that money just doesn't disappear. It goes somewhere. It's just like somebody tells me, tells you there's no such thing as a free lunch. It is true. Somebody somewhere has to pay, whether it's through their time, their effort, so on and so forth. It's going to become a bit of a problem. Now, the lawsuit also contends that the program itself that's currently doing right now, they're saying it's just $39 billion. But according to the lawsuit, the program itself could ultimately affect more than 3.5 million borrowers at a price tag of $175 billion. Taxpayers are the ones who have to make up for the lost revenue, McCluskey said. You're hurting somebody in order to try and benefit someone else. That's pretty much exactly it. Is that right there? And so this is I kind of figured as soon as he did this, I think if you recall, I don't do like the Dan Bongino Flaggett thing, but if you go back a couple of episodes when they first announced this, I literally said this is probably going to go to court and get challenged. And it is. And it should. And I'm hoping that it will also get knocked down, because this is just crazy and nuts. All right, let me see what else do I have here? Whoops. Let me see, what else do I have here? Oh. Okay, well, let me finish this off. I've only got a few minutes left, but let me finish this off. This next one is kind of actually funny. So, all right, you remember the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing and how the company was saying, oh, we're just trying a new ad, so on and so forth. Well, check this out. This piece comes from Town Hall. Now, I actually saw a video of this. There was an interview, apparently. Billy Bush, who is the heir of Anheuser-Busch. Now, keep in mind, he no longer is a part of the organization, I don't believe. But he was interviewed about the whole Dylan Mulvaney kick-up. And he said that his ancestors would be rolling over in their graves over the company's partnership with the transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Bush made his remarks in an interview with TMZ host Harvey Levin on Friday. According to Fox 2 Now, Bush has been on a publicity tour for his new book, Family Reigns, The Extraordinary Rise and Epic Fall of an American Dynasty. During the conversation, Levin asked Bush for his thoughts on Bud Light's controversy with transgender influencer Mulvaney. This is what Bush said. I think my family, my ancestors would be rolling over in their graves. They were very patriotic. They loved this country and what it stood for. They believed that transgender, gays, that sort of thing was all a very personal issue. They loved this country because it is a free country and people are allowed to do what they want, but it was never meant to be on a beer can. And it was never meant to be pushed into people's faces, Bush said in the interview. So they would have never marketed their brands that way. They were incredible with what they came out with, he continued. The Clydesdales, the frogs, the lizards, all the different promotions that they had and the different advertising they had. The last thing they would have done was to get as controversial as they did, as InBev has, with Dylan Mulvaney. So Levin argued that the motivation behind Bud Light's campaign with Mulvaney was inclusiveness, and asked for Bush's thoughts on the backlash Bud Light has faced after partnering. And Bush said, I think people who drink beer, I think they're your common folk. I think they are the blue collar worker who goes and works hard every single day. The last thing they want to be drinking is a beer can with that kind of message on it. I just don't think that's what they're looking for. They want their beer to be truly American, truly patriotic, as it always has been. Truly America's beer, which Bud Light was and probably isn't any longer. And he's like, and Levin says, what's the message? I'm a little confused here. Why is it not American? And Bush explains, I just don't think the audience that drinks beer is into transgenders and that kind of advertising. I think people that drink beer are much more, again, straight, blue collar. I mean, should I necessarily say straight? Yeah. So anyway, it kind of went back and forth a little bit, but I mean, essentially, yeah. So, and Bush goes, toward the end of the interview, he says, your sexual preferences are meant to stay private. Again, folks, I'm just going to point this out. If you want to be transgender, if you want to be gay, if you want to be, pansexual, like, what's his name? Wayne Brady just came out as. If you want to do that, that's fine. Just don't expect to have a conversation with somebody. I mean, wearing that as your badge of honor in public, to me, I mean, it goes against everything that most people, there are certain things that should be private. You don't need to be advertising all of that and what you do in your bedroom. I mean, you don't see people walking around and saying, hey, I'm a dominatrix, or hey, I like being, dressing up as a baby in freaking diapers and having some woman in a skimpy costume come and change my diapers or whatever. Really? I mean, seriously, none of that needs to be said out in the open. Okay? None of that really needs to be said out in the open. It doesn't need to be talked about. It's your own personal preference. That's the beauty of America. That's the beauty of where we are in America, is that you live your life, I live mine, and as long as we don't cross each other or cause problems with each other, then, we should be fine. We should be able to, it's a live and let live mentality. And that's essentially what we need to do. All of this stuff that's out here now, there's no reason. I didn't need to know that Wayne Brady was a pansexual. I mean, I knew Wayne Brady because of Whose Line Is It Anyway, but I've got no desire to know what his personal things are. Just doesn't work. All right, that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor. If you like the program and you haven't already, head on over to Rumble. Rumble's my my choice, honestly, because I don't know how long Facebook and YouTube are going to let me transmit, or even Twitter for that matter, or sorry, X. But head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It's free, and follow the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel over there. I hope that all of you out there have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you Saturday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Rumble. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.